Let's talk about conflict and conflict resolution. Where does conflict derive from? If you are somewhat trauma informed and you've done some inner work, you will find this video helpful. But if you are not trauma informed and are not conscious of your own traumas, this video might be quite triggering, but I invite you to try and listen anyways. Conflict. The world is full of conflict. Humanity is full of conflict. Where does it come from? Where does it rise from? Is there some evil entity called the devil or Satan that instigates these war energies, these conflict energies? Well, I'm going to tell you where it derives from. Of course, I can't go so deep and take you back to the before of the beginning, but let's just step back with what we are aware of, or I'll try and help you get aware. Every human being, every human soul enters this world with heaps of trauma, and that trauma then gets compounded to the point where our emotional body and psychological body becomes so inflamed from the wounding that ego is going to step forward and become the manager of your person. Ego has gotten a bad rap, but in reality it all works together. Ego is there to defend and protect your emotional body and your psychological body. So when we are too inflamed in those two areas of our being, then the logical part of our ego mind has to pick up the slack and keep us functioning in daily life. So most people are always in their ego because the trauma wounding has not been addressed, and because most people are living from their subconscious trauma. They are always inflamed, they're always in ego, and so when two people like that meet each other and they confront each other from these trauma wounds, that is what creates conflict. It can be as petty as arguments or as big as war. But the source, the root of this is the same root. Every human being has unresolved trauma wounds. And what do these trauma wounds look like? For example, I'm just talking this lifetime now, but potentially there have been many lifetimes, and this trauma goes beyond these 70 years of your life. But in this lifetime, for example, we have the wound of invalidation. If as a child you have never been encouraged, never validated for your opinion, your ideas, your feelings, you're going to carry that into your adulthood. This underlying subconscious feeling, the emotional emotion of hurt, and the psychological pain of invalidation. So as an adult, as you are still clamoring and trying to get another person to validate you, this need for validation from outside of us stays with us until we become conscious of the need. But in our need of seeking validation, and validation is more than just getting somebody's yes, it comes from a deep sense of understanding that when you validate someone, the energy behind the validation comes from a deep understanding of actually seeing value in your opinion. But there's very little of that happening. So in your quest to seek this validation, subconsciously, you're not even conscious of that this is what you are wanting and looking for. So you end up in these conflicts, in these arguments over opinions. And because this subconscious need for validation is the driver behind your ego, you are insisting that you are right and the other person is wrong. And it creates a conflict that will never be resolved. Some people take this to their grave. And I'm not blaming them for it. It's just that they are simply unaware of these other layers that make up their being. Right? We have 5 energy bodies: physical, emotional, psychological, mental or intellectual, and then spiritual. But people are usually only aware of one layer, and that's their physical and mental awareness. So anyways, this is where the conflict comes from. The whole world, all of humanity is filled with trauma. And we're going to, if we want to see the world ever coming into harmony, we have to start with ourselves. We have to start looking at our personal trauma and resolve these childhood wounds. Basically, what you have to do as the adult, as the rational adult, you have to reparent yourself and look at this need for validation. And you have to realize you will never get that validation from another person. So you're just going to have arguments over right and wrong, good and bad, till the cows come home, literally. And they never come home. You have to bring it home. You have to start validating yourself. And it becomes a natural process once your awareness comes on board. Once you notice your shadows popping up. Once you feel, after every argument you don't feel so great, and you realize that your ego has made a real ass of itself, you need to sit with those moments and introspect. What is really going on? What happened, right? Why was I on such a defensive? What am I trying to defend? Is it even worth? Is the thing, the opinion, even worth defending? Or is this something deeper I need to address? And it is your need for validation. This is where self-love and self-care is so important. Emotional and psychological self-care. And now I want to take this to religion for a minute, or spirituality. All religion and all spirituality is actually slightly missing the boat. And what the ancient texts have been trying to convey is this phenomenon of the soul, the psyche, our emotional and psychological body. But maybe they didn't have the understanding or the language in ancient times, and they wrote it in symbolism and in metaphysics and allegory and parables. But I'm hoping that I can simplify it and just explain it in psychological terms. Since the responsibility to heal the root of all conflict lies within ourselves, you might see that the belief systems of religion and Christianity or Islam, any belief system, is actually a moot point. There isn't going to come a savior that is going to make peace. Jesus is not going to come and set the world at peace. And certainly not through violence or through a sword, by putting down his enemies. That is such a bad language. The best you can take away from that is that it is symbolism, and that you have to bring the sword within yourself and make peace. Make peace with your shadows. But you don't want to subdue anything. You really need to love your shadows, because you became the person that you are today because you have been subdued, because your opinions and your feelings were disregarded. That's why you are who you are today. Wounded, and you're responding from hurt and wounds. So this is where religion has failed. Your relationship with Jesus has failed because you can take any Christian or any person with a relationship of Jesus. Perhaps there is one exception somewhere, because one should not paint with such a broad brush. Let's say there's one exception somewhere out there. But for everyone else, Jesus has not brought the peace that is required to end all conflict. Because look at the Christians. Arguments and conflict ensues and remains. Why? Because the internal trauma has not been addressed and dealt with. This is where you become your own savior. Jesus will never do this for you. That's why religion is still divided. That's why even people with relationships with Jesus as their personal savior are still divided from the rest of the world and the rest of humanity. They're divided in their own families because you're living in a trauma situation. You have to address the trauma. You have to become your savior. And yeah, I think I will end it here. I'm going to another topic on a different video. This is getting quite long. I hope that you stayed with me to this end, and I hope that you can see what I said and look within yourself where the conflict is coming from within yourself. As you resolve that, you will become a peaceable, peaceful person that no longer has to defend their opinions, because it won't matter. These opinions are all phantoms that are just there, like soap bubbles floating in the air as objects that you use to fish for validation. When you validate yourself, none of those opinions matter. You can be at peace with everyone. All right, I'm gonna have some lunch here, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope some of this made sense. Take care. If you have any questions about my video, just please leave it in the comment section, and I'll try and answer in more detail in the comments. Thank you, and take care.